Hello viewers, in this video I will try to discuss a chapter related to structuralism, and the title of the chapter is The Science of the Concrete. It is written by Claude Lévi Strauss, and it is an excerpt taken from Strauss's work The Savage Mind. Through this video, it is my endeavor to give you an insight about the science of the concrete as propagated by Claude Lévi Strauss. I would like to mention here one thing, and that is, please excuse my pronunciation. Now, before moving on, I would like to add one more thing, and that thing is, I have left no stone unturned to give you the authentic information related to this topic. However, it may happen that some things are quite vague, some things are not comprehensible. If it happens, then please ignore me. Therefore, it is my request to all the viewers not to take this video as an absolute source for your exam preparation or concept clarification. You must read the original text line by line, word by word, and sentence by sentence. If you don't do that, then you will not utterly comprehend the concept of the science of the concrete as put forwarded by Claude Lévi Strauss. That's all. Now let's begin. At the beginning of the video, I would like to talk about science of the concrete in a very simplified language. Now let's try to know what is science of the concrete. The science of the concrete, it refers to the detailed and practical or pragmatic knowledge traditional societies have about their environment. Unlike modern science, which often uses abstract concepts, this knowledge focuses on specific, observable details. It is based on direct experience and is deeply rooted in cultural practices and beliefs. Claude Lévi Strauss argues that this type of knowledge is just as valuable as modern scientific knowledge, even though it is expressed differently. Now let's try to know it in a broader context. In a very simplified language, the science of the concrete means the so-called primitive people, or you can say backward people, or tribal people, or marginalized people. Those people are often portrayed or often elucidated as barbaric, savage, and one who possesses no knowledge. And they are often labeled as primitive people. If we label a tribe, a society, or a community as a primitive or backward or uncivilized, that means we are also ignoring and overlooking about their culture, their knowledge, their wisdom, and their belief system. And in that way, through that comparison, we often think ourselves as modern people, forwarded people, enlightened people, or civilized people. We often do that. And whenever we do that, we feel that we are at the top and they are at the bottom, or they are backward, or they have no status in a civilized realm. So according to Claude Lévi Strauss, human beings often call a culture which is not known to them or him or her as backward, primitive, or uncivilized or savage. But when someone is saying like that, then they are not focusing on the structure. Structure means why they are like that. If a tribe or if a society govern themselves in a quite different way, then why they are like that? We never try to understand. And if we want to know about them emphatically, then we must try to analyze those cultural practices, beliefs, and social practices through underlying structures. Only after connecting the structure or connecting the dots, then only we will be able to know about their culture, and then only we will be able to grasp their lifestyle. And in that way, we also lose many valuable information from that tribe or that culture or that community. So he is saying that the so-called primitive people are not so primitive. They are not primitive. We are labeling them as primitive. They are not primitive. The way they cure their diseases, the way they live their healthy lifestyle, the way they eat their food, the way they do their dressing, sense, code and style, these all things are part of their inherent belief, inherent comprehension of their nature. We cannot reject, we cannot overlook that. And the author, Claude Lévi Strauss, he has tried to emphasize on this thing that the primitive people, they are not primitive. Just because they are living their life in a different way, it doesn't mean that they are primitive. Okay. So let's try to again read this sentence. The science of the concrete refers to the detailed and practical knowledge traditional societies have their environment. If you go to a particular tribal society or so-called savage or uncivilized society, then what you will see? Without modern medicinal practice, they are living their life. They can cure diseases without organized hospital, organized medical facilities. They are doing it, right? That means they are doing it because they have the practical knowledge about their environment, where they are living for decade, for a long time. But on the other hand, if you talk about modern world, in modern world, we always value modern science that we often do and we should do. But when we talk about modern science, then in modern science you will not get everything on a practical concept or on a practical circumstance. Unlike primitive, so-called primitive or the traditional societies, right? In modern science, you cannot make a medicine or you cannot create a medicine directly from the nature. You must include various kinds of methodology, various kinds of concepts. You must be in a laboratory. After doing all the examinations, all the investigations, all the study, all the examinations, then only after many trials, then only you can land up at the conclusion. On the other hand, the traditional societies, if something happens in their society, like someone is suffering from some diseases, then without that methodological approach, they can create a medicine, and after taking that medicine, they are often cured. Since they are cured, that means they are also enlightened being, but in a different way. On the other hand, in modern society, we use scientific approaches, various kinds of scientific approaches, and most of them are abstract. Abstract means related to theory, which we cannot touch, which we cannot use directly. Right? On the other hand, in modern society or so-called primitive society, there you will see that they don't have any kind of abstract knowledge. They don't have. They have direct or concrete knowledge about something, and through that they create concrete concrete product for their well-being or to live their lifestyle. They don't have any kind of abstract feeling, abstract knowledge, abstract element, abstract any other thing. Most of them are quite concrete. Concrete means which are solid, which you can touch, which is quite pragmatic. Okay, but on the other hand, in modern societies, in modern science, most of the things are quite related to methodological, scientific approach. So the author, he has highlighted that the traditional societies, they use concrete concept and they have direct experience, and those things are rooted in cultural practice and beliefs deeply. And the author has also opined that this type of knowledge, which is practiced by traditional societies as well as modern societies, these both knowledge are same, but they are express in a different way. So this is what science of concrete in a very simplified language. If you read the text, then only you will get to know in a comprehensive way. So please read the text. Now let's take an example. Let's say you are in a forest. You notice that certain plants can be used for medicine while others are good for building. This is similar to how traditional societies understand their environment. They have detailed knowledge about the plants and animals around them and how to use them. Very simple. On the other hand, if you talk about our modern society, so-called modern here too. So in modern society, we often try to apply various kinds of methodological approach to understand some things, some elements from the nature. On the other hand, in traditional society, they don't use any kind of methodological approach, systematic, organized approach. Whatever they see, okay, this is a tree, and in that tree, I have seen a food is hanging, right? So I will think that, okay, if it is edible, then I will pluck it, right? That is how traditional society work. On the other hand, whether I should eat it or not, I will try to first examine its properties. I will take it to the laboratory in a scientific society. Got it? The concept of the science of the concrete, it highlights the valuable and often overlooked knowledge that traditional societies possess about their environment. It challenges the perception that this knowledge is less sophisticated than modern scientific understanding, emphasizing the importance of different forms of knowledge and ways of understanding the world. The modern scientific knowledge is often complex and involves abstract concepts, advanced technology, and specialized methodologies. It is based on systematic observation, experimentation, and theoretical frameworks that can be challenging to understand without specific training or expertise. That is true. If you are from a traditional society, then you will have different kinds of knowledge related to disease, related to lifestyle, related to food habit, related to cultural habit, related to spiritual thing, various other things, right? And on the other hand, in modern society, you will have the same thing. You will have the same understanding, but in whatever field you are going, you must use a systematic observation, and you must use abstract concept. Without abstract concept, nothing exists in modern societies, especially in the context of scientific observations or scientific methodology. The science of the concrete, it is a concept explored by Claude Lévi Strauss in his work The Savage Mind. It refers to the systematic and detailed knowledge traditional societies have about their immediate environment. This knowledge is often based on direct observation and practical experience, leading to a deep understanding of the natural world. Unlike modern scientific methods that often abstract knowledge into generalized concepts and theories, the science of the concrete focuses on the specific properties and relationship of concrete objects. The form of knowledge is embedded in cultural practices, myths, and rituals, reflecting a holistic and contextualized understanding of the world. Lévi Strauss argues that traditional societies' understanding of their environment is just as rigorous and valid as modern scientific knowledge. I hope it is understandable. It is self-explanatory, even though it may be expressed in different way. He challenges the notion that traditional societies are intellectually inferior, highlighted instead the complexity and depth of their knowledge system. So we often argue, or we often note that traditional societies are bunch of blind beliefs or superstitions. They are very backward thinking. We often think like that. So that thinking, that philosophy is challenged by Claude Lévi Strauss. Claude Lévi Strauss' main argument in the said chapter is that traditional societies possesses a sophisticated and systematic understanding of their environment, which he calls the science of the concrete. Hope you have understood. This knowledge, while different from modern scientific knowledge, is not inferior and should be respected and understood on its own terms. So if you want to know about their affluent cultural practice, affluent lifestyle, affluent food habits, affluent medicinal practice, then you must analyze it. You must examine it through various layers of structure. Then only you will understand it. Else, you will be deprived of many things which are quite sophisticated in the context of traditional societies. Lévi Strauss challenges the view that traditional societies are primitive or intellectually inferior, highlighting the complexities and depth of their knowledge system. Got it? One example he gives is the detailed botanical knowledge of the Hanuno people of the Philippines. So in the chapter, he has mentioned about it that there is a tribe or a society called Hanuno people in Philippines, and they have immense botanical knowledge. Despite being a subsistence level society, the Hanuno have an intricate understanding of their local flora and fauna, recognizing a vast number of plant and animal species and their uses. This challenges the assumption that subsistence level groups only use a small portion of their local environment. Lévi-Strauss also discusses how traditional societies have a precise and detailed classification system for plants, animals, and natural phenomena. For example, the Fang people of Gabon can identify even the slightest differences between species of the same genus, demonstrating a high level of observational skill and botanical knowledge. So, in that chapter, the author has given various examples to prove his point. One example is about the Fang people. So he has argued that the Fang people of Gabon, they can identify even the slightest differences between species of the same genus. So it demonstrates a high level of observational skill and botanical knowledge which are possessed by the Fang people, and they are from traditional society, and which can't be done by the non-primitive or scientifically advanced or modern scientific people. Got it? Very clear? And we can apply this in our Indian context also. There are various tribes that live in the hilly and non-hilly region of our India. And they have been cut off, they have been digressed, they have been alienated from the mainstream India, but they are living their life peacefully. They are living, they are observing, they are practicing, they are surviving. If any kind of disease affect them, then they are cured by their own medicine. If any kind of problem comes up, then they can settle it, right? So they are living the way they have been now since time immemorial. They have been doing it. They don't need scientific knowledge to move on in their life. They have been doing it. So that shows what? That shows that primitive societies are not primitive. Primitive, that term is given by you. They may also give you the same term. No one knows. So instead of saying that backward society, savage people, uncivilized people, primitive people, we must use our structuralism approach to understand them, and that will also benefit our modern scientific knowledge. If you talk about traditional societies have sophisticated knowledge, then I have already mentioned about Hanu people that you can add in your exam. Then we will try to know about other things. So let's move on to other relevant information pertaining to this chapter. Now, Claude Lévi-Strauss, in his essay The Science of the Concrete, he discusses the way traditional societies use concrete objects and their relationship to understand and interact with the world around them. This form of knowledge, which he calls the science of concrete, it contrasts with modern scientific thought, which abstracts knowledge into generalized concepts and theories. Lévi-Strauss argues that traditional societies possess a rich, systematic knowledge of their environment that is based on direct observation and practical experience, and this has been reiterated many times. And this knowledge is embedded in cultural practices, myths, and rituals, revealing a sophisticated and coherent way of understanding the world that is deeply rooted in the specifics of their immediate environment. In the first chapter of The Savage Mind, titled The Science of the Concrete, Claude Lévi-Strauss explores how different cultures, particularly those labeled as primitive, perceive and classify the world around them. He challenges the notion that so-called primitive languages lack the capacity for abstract thought by highlighting examples from languages such as Chinook. So this has been mentioned in the chapter. Lévi-Strauss argues against the stereotype that primitive people are unable to engage in abstract thinking. So this is our misconception that since they are not educated, since they don't know how to read and write, that means they don't have abstract thinking, which is quite wrong. And he has said that a misconception often perpetuated by focusing on their detailed classifications of flora and fauna without recognizing their capacity for abstract expressions. He illustrates this by referencing Franz Boas's observations on Chinook, a language spoken in the northwest of North America. In Chinook, abstract concepts are expressed through phrases that encapsulate properties and qualities. For example, instead of saying the bad man killed a poor child, Chinook speakers would say the man's badness killed the child's poverty. Similarly, the woman used too small a basket is rendered as she put the potentilla roots into the smallness of a calm basket. So this is an instance taken from the text. If you read the text, then you will get it, and you must include this in your exam. And this example demonstrates or it showcases that primitive languages are rich in abstract terms and are capable of conveying complex ideas, contradicting the view that abstract thinking is a privilege of civilized languages. Lévi-Strauss's discussion underscores the sophistication and depth of traditional societies' understanding of the world, highlighting their systematic and coherent knowledge rooted in their immediate environment. So, not only in the context of medicinal field, in every field, they are not backward. Even if we analyze through structure by structure, then we will get to know they are affluent, they are rich in most of the cases. Claude Lévi-Strauss, in The Science of the Concrete, addresses the ways in which languages compensate for supposed deficiencies in vocabulary through discourse and syntax. He critiques the bias arguments that have historically been used to portray primitive people as intellectually inferior due to their vocabulary's focus on the specific rather than the abstract. This is also an argument put forwarded by him. Lévi-Strauss notes that criticisms of primitive languages for lacking general terms are contradicted by instances where these languages actually possess such terms. He highlights the inconsistency in these arguments by pointing out that similar criticisms are also leveled when primitive languages contain more general terms than specific ones. For example, it has been observed that some indigenous people name only those plants and animals that are directly useful or harmful to them, with all others being grouped under broad categories such as bird or weed. This observation made by Strauss is used to argue that such a naming practice indicates a limited intellectual capacity. Okay, so it is very easy to comprehend, so I will not explain. So this thing you can add. However, Lévi-Strauss challenges the view by citing a more recent account from Handy and Pukui, who describe how Marquesian natives found the botanists' interest in collecting and naming useless which amusing. This reaction was interpreted as evidence that the native people only name and form concepts based on their immediate needs. So this I would like to elucidate. So here the writer is saying, and he has given an example that some botanists, they have gone to a place where native people live, and that native people is called Marquesian. And in their area, after reaching in that place, they are collecting useless or futile botanical species, which has no relevance for the native people. And that's why they are laughing, that why you are doing it. Okay, because they have knowledge that this is useless. Whatever is useful, those things are known to them. That's why they are saying that why you are using it, these things are useless. On the other hand, the modern scientific approach will think that, okay, this may not be useful, this may be useful, let's try to first gather the sample, and then let's try to take it to laboratory, then let's try to use various scientific methodological approach to understand it like that. On the other hand, without having those scientific methodological approach, they can directly say that these things are useless, why you are taking it. So that example he has included here. Lévi-Strauss uses these examples to demonstrate that the methods by which different cultures categorize the name and name their environment are logical and coherent within their specific context. These practices reflect a pragmatic approach to knowledge that prioritizes practical relevance and utility over abstract classification, thus showcasing the richness and adaptability of so-called primitive intellectual system. So, it proves that the primitive people, without having scientific approach and methodological system, they are affluent in many ways. They don't need to study. They don't need to have scientific approach to understand a botanical species. They can do it through their observational skill and through their oral knowledge. They don't need to remember, or they don't need to store irrelevant things inside their brain which has no use for them. Whatever are useful for them, they are using it, and they have that concept, they have that idea. And that is how survival is done. But in the scientific context, those things which have no use, you are still reading it, you are still trying to deliberately finding out why, if it is not useful, then why it is not useful. That thing you are trying to do. So let's take an example that is related to our real life, right? In class, let's say in our high school. In high school days, we might have read, most of us, various kinds of mathematical theories. And most of the theories are not useful for us. Us means those who have done their research in mathematical field, those things are different. But for most of us, most of the mathematical approaches, mathematical knowledge, mathematical approaches are useless. But still we are learning and we are wasting our time, right? And that is how scientific approach works. And it can be applied in the context of science too, in the context of other subjects too. We often mug up millions of useless informations. On the other hand, this thing is not done by the so-called primitive people. They don't do it. They will only take whatever is needed, whatever is essential, whatever is inevitable. Claude Lévi-Strauss in The Science of the Concrete, it continues to challenge the notion that so-called primitive peoples are intellectually inferior due to their naming practices by examining the observations made by Handy and Pukui. They note that the indifference of native peoples to certain natural phenomena can be compared to the indifference shown by specialists in modern civilizations towards phenomena outside their fields of expertise. Handy reports that his native collaboration in Hawaii emphasized that every botanical, zoological or inorganic form known to have name was something used in some way. This practical approach to naming means that many living things in the forest and seas, as well as meteorological and marine phenomena, were unnamed because they were considered of no use of interest. Handy and Pukui make a distinction between use which concerns practical matters and interest which pertains to theoretical concerns. The same thing has been repeated here in a different way. So I hope it is self-explanatory. Lévi-Strauss highlights that this distinction supports the idea that traditional societies possess a complex and nuanced understanding of their environment. The natives focus on the practical utility of named entities, reflect a systematic approach to knowledge where practical relevance is paramount. However, the term interest indicates that there is also theoretical dimensions to their understanding, even if it is less emphasized. Handy and Pukui's account reinforces this theoretical aspect, stating that living was experience fraught with exact and definite significance. This suggests that traditional societies imbue their experiences with a rich significance, reflecting a deep and precise understanding of their world, even if it is guided primarily by practical concerns. Thus, Lévi-Strauss argues that the intellectual capacity of these societies should not be underestimated based on their naming practices alone, as these practices are deeply rooted in their specific cultural and environmental context. That's all. Okay, now let's try to know about other relevant information said by the author in the said book. Okay. Lévi-Strauss suggests that, so he has put forward two concepts. One is bricolier, that means flexible thinking that is done by traditional society or so-called primitive people. And on the other hand, engineer, which is practiced by the modern society, or you can call systematic and specialized thinking. One is bricolier, that is flexible. On the other hand, engineer, that is not flexible. Got it? Now let's try to know it in detail. According to the author, the engineer represents the scientific mind, which approaches projects systematically, procuring all necessary materials and tools to achieve a specific goal efficiently. But on the other hand, the bricolier, on the other hand, it represents the savage mind, which is more improvisational and creative, using whatever is at hand to create something new. Right? You must have seen, if you want to become an engineer, then what will happen? Then you need to study. I'm just giving you an example. Okay, you don't think that this thing is said by Claude Lévi-Strauss. He has not said this. So the example is, if you want to become an engineer, then you have to study 4 years of degree, 4 years of diploma, right? And you have to do schooling, pre-schooling, post-schooling, various things. On the other hand, in traditional societies, they can build house, they can build bridge, they can do whatever they like, but they don't have to study 4 years of diploma, 4 years of engineering. That means their approach is what? Their approach is bricolier, very flexible. Whatever you have, just take it and just use it. Whatever knowledge you have observed, you think that it will work, you use it, it will work. If it doesn't, then leave it. On the other hand, in an engineering approach, you have to remember whatever you have been taught. This amount of thing must be used, this must be there, it has to be used, and this method must be applied, this scale of material must be used. So these things are systematic, organized, and this thing is done by the engineering approach. Got it? And let's take one more example. Before the origins of scientific or methodological or systematic knowledge or approach, there were civilizations, so-called primitive civilizations. They built something, those are extraordinary, without having that scientific skill, that scientific approach or engineering thinking. They have done it, right? And those things are still erected. Those things exist in our society, in most of the country, right? How they have done it? They have done it through flexible way. They never had that engineering skill. Okay, this needed, this approach is needed. They have not done it, but they have done it through their own way. Means they are also intellectual in a different way. You are also intellectual. You are doing a different way. So that must be respected. Lévi Strauss suggests that while the engineer has the ability to create new tools and materials, both the engineer and the bricolayer are limited by the constraints of their respective realities. The bricolayer must make do with whatever is available, while the engineer is constrained by existing knowledge and technical means. Despite these differences, both the engineer and the bricolayer work within a closed system, albeit with different degrees of flexibility and creativity. So in both fields, you will get various levels, degrees of flexibility and creativity. Okay, now let's take an everyday example. In everyday life, we often encounter situations where we need to solve problems or complete tasks or works. These situations can be approached in different ways, similar to the bricolayer and engineering analogy. Bricolayer approach is, imagine you need to organize your workspace at home. You might look around for items you already have, like old boxes or containers, and use them creatively to store your things. This improvisational approach involves making the best use of what is available. Got it? So this is bricolayer. On the other hand, engineering approach will be, you could approach the task like an engineer. You might make a plan, you will measure the space, and then you will purchase specific storage solutions designed for your needs. And this methodological approach involves using specialized tools and materials to achieve a specific goal. Got it? So I hope you have understood this simplified approach. And we can say both approaches have their merits and demerits. The bricolayer approach allows for creativity and flexibility, while the engineer approach ensures efficiency and effectiveness. Depending on the situation, one approach may be more suitable than the other. That's all. I think we have more or less understood the concept of the science of the concrete. Hope it will help you. But please read the whole text. I have not included all the examples from the text. If you read the text, then you will get it. Just treat this video as a secondary source. Okay, don't take it as a primary source for your study. You must re-investigate, re-examine, re-read, then only accept it. Just because I have said something, don't believe it blindly. You must have rational thinking. Thank you.